Welcome back. We begin with the latest on the murder of Charlie Kirk. Over the weekend, we learned the suspect, 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, was allegedly romantically involved with a roommate, a male transitioning to a female.
Joining us now, Bill Caruso is a Democrat strategist and attorney, and also with us is Julie Harris, the president of the National Federation of Republican Women. Good morning.
Good morning.
Julie, starting with you here, based on what we know so far, we've learned quite a bit since last week. Does the killer's reported political beliefs or his relationship with a transgender boyfriend have political implications for the left? And in terms of overall where he stands, we even saw the girlfriend put out on social media, riding with Biden. I mean, it does seem to be that the ideology of this individual is from that perspective. Your thoughts?
Yes, this was absolutely politically motivated. I don't think anyone can argue that fact. Being here in D.C., I was able to attend church here with my daughter, and the pastor of the church we attended said, "The kingdom of God advances and never retreats." And then that evening when I attended the vigil at the Kennedy Center and the lines out the door, and even hours into, or at least an hour into the event, people were still waiting in line to get in. And organically, people just began to pray where they were, even in their cars around the Kennedy Center. And I thought, that is how the kingdom of God advances. Charlie was very bold with his faith. And to see those who supported Charlie coming together and praying, humbling themselves and praying for their nation during this time, as stark contrast to how the left have handled it whenever there's been tragedy on their side. It was very telling. And I believe that this is going to be a turning point in America, just like a turning point that Charlie started.
Right.
So true, Julie. And last week, President Trump called for nonviolence, as Charlie himself would have wanted. Yet a recent YouGov poll shows 25% of those on the left support political violence, compared to just 3% of conservatives. How do we lower the temperature on the left in such a divided environment, Bill?
Well, I think we need to lower the temperature completely. And I'm on the left. I think that there's concerns on the left. And I'd also argue, I think it's not smart to jump to conclusions, as we've seen here. We think we know a little bit about this guy's ideology. We don't know all about it. We also don't know completely about motive and what potentially drove this guy to do this stuff. Because I think we've seen in the course of 48 hours, 60 hours, 72 hours, back and forth. I mean, I've seen people on the left claiming that this is a right-wing side of the aisle issue, and those facts were disproven. Let's let the facts fall where they are. But as far as temperature goes, this is how we reduce the temperature. Discussions like this, coming on the air and talking about things on a bipartisan level. I'm a Democrat. I'm on here with conservatives talking about how we tone down the temperature. I think our public officials need to do that, too, in every single way that they speak. I've been really, really heartened by folks like John Fetterman on my side of the aisle, who's been continuing to talk about those things. I'm paying attention to people like that, not idiots out there that are stoking violence. And just last piece, I just say to you, I do agree with my fellow panelists here that I do think we're at a turning point, no pun intended. I didn't know a lot about Charlie Kirk before this issue happened. I think he's done some really good things to create a discussion in America, especially among young people. That's a really important segment of the population that's sort of lost right now. I hope it continues. I hope it continues on both sides of the aisle, and I do hope it continues around faith. I think we've lost faith in this country, and I think turning back to faith is important too.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Charlie Kirk said in terms of remembering him and his legacy. That's what he wanted to be known for. Exactly right, Bill. So yesterday, J.D. Vance posted this on X saying, quote, "Tomorrow I will have the honor of hosting the Charlie Kirk Show. Please join me as I pay tribute to my friend." Julie, what kind of tone do you expect from the vice president on today's show?
I would expect it to be a very somber tone. I don't know how it could be anything but somewhat more mournful, but also hopeful. They were good friends, and I didn't know Charlie well personally. We had been in the same space working, of course, on many campaigns, and it's been very sobering to see where we've come in our country with this political discourse. And so I would imagine that Vice President Vance is going to be true to who he is. He's going to be bold, and he's going to be straightforward and clear, but I think we're also going to see somewhat of a sorrowful but hopeful side of our Vice President.
So true. And a memorial was also held yesterday for Kirk at the Kennedy Center. Here's what White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said about his impact on the conservative movement.
I would not be in this position if not for the heroic efforts of Charlie Kirk, who turned the political tide among young people in this country and helped usher in President Trump's historic victory on November 5th, 2024.
You know, Bill, starting with Caroline Leavitt and so many other young conservatives that we've had on our show, we see on social media, they speak at, let's say, the RNC convention and so many other prominent platforms. There's a huge wave of young conservatives that Kirk actually influenced. What say you?
I don't think it's just young conservatives. I think it's normal people that want to have a conversation. We can have a conversation about race without people calling people racist. We can have a conversation about challenges in our country without people calling people fascists and Nazis. A happy dialogue that we can be disagreeable, and we've done it here. I think that's what has been awakened in this country of the end of cancel culture, the end of shouting down your opponent and listening and talking. And how about this? We learned this when we were little. Use your words. That's where I think we're headed. I'm hopeful too. And it's not just for conservatives. It's for good people in the world that want to have dialogue and conversations and stop with the cancel culture and the nonsense and dunking on each other.
Mm-hmm. Also, understanding the situation, reading the room. I think that would actually help with a compassionate heart.
Turning to a local issue that could have nationwide repercussions, New York Governor Kathy Hochul endorsing Zohran Mamdani for mayor, writing in the New York Times, quote, "I needed to know the next mayor will not be someone who would surrender 1 inch to President Trump." Julie, is she really endorsing anti-police socialist just because he's anti-Trump? It certainly seems that way by her comments.
This is more just political rhetoric. I mean, she's jumping on a bandwagon. I'm very concerned for New York. We'll see how this goes. I would think after this last week that we've had in our nation's capital, hopefully New Yorkers are rethinking the direction that their city is going. We'll see. I'm puzzled and I'm very concerned with what New York may be about to elect as their next mayor.
Yeah.
Well, President Trump continues his push to rid cities of crime and illegal immigration. Here's what Texas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett had to say.
But as somebody who understands history, when I see ICE, I see slave patrols. Now, I never lived through the slave patrol period, but if you know the history of policing in this country, then you understand that they were born out of slave patrols.
Bill, what is your take on that comment? Because I know many black people actually would not believe a word that just came out of her mouth.
Well, I mean, yeah, and this is sort of irresponsible rhetoric, and she even says it in the middle of her. I'm not familiar with slave patrols. I was around for them. I mean, listen, ridiculous. ICE is serving a purpose right now the American people voted for. We may not agree with it fully, but that's frankly a congressional problem to deal with the issue of immigration. And dealing with these issues now, you see Memphis, Tennessee is going to be getting some added benefit of the National Guard. That mayor didn't ask for it, but he said he's going to work with it because I think people are starting to recognize we have a crime problem. And solving that problem is going to take a whole of government approach. The president has offered these resources to come in and work. And so far, despite our hysteria over pushing back on some of these things, it's working, and I think the public is responding to this. So this is where John Fetterman said the other day, stop pushing back on this stuff. work with this president on this. We can fight back on other things. There's places to do that. But this is probably a place where we're losing ground with the American public because crime has been a problem, and there's been a focus from the American public on where they want us to solve it. The president's responding. We need to figure out how to do it too.
Thanks so much, Bill and Julie. We appreciate your commentary.